Dr. Mary Nishimoto is a local. She's been at UCLA or UCSB. Mary, how many years? 30 years. So this is interesting. She's originally from the Central Valley, nowhere near the ocean, and then went to school in Davis, nowhere near the ocean, but then got a job teaching as an educator on boats for kids. Dr. Mary Nishimoto.
Thank you, everyone. Wow, that light is very bright, and I think you've heard that before. Thank you, Dean, and congratulations on your new position, wherever you may be, because I can't see you, as the new Executive Director of the Maritime Museum. And I want to thank Greg Gorga, who's now retired, as the retired Executive Director, for inviting me to give a presentation here. And I want to thank Heather, Jason, Faith, others, and of course the sponsor, Marie. I haven't yet had a chance to meet you, and I do want to after this, and all the other sponsors who support this really amazing museum. For the last 7 years, it's truly been a pleasure to be the liaison serving the commercial fishermen and member oil companies working offshore San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. For 30 years, I've also been a researcher at UCSB, and I have been so fortunate and found it fun in a very geeky science way to be platform science pioneers with Ann Scarborough-Bull is here, and Caitlin and Connor are here, who I've also worked with, and so I'm really happy to have a lot of friends and fellow colleagues here tonight. Okay, let me get myself situated here. Okay, and I want to express my appreciation for two important friends and mentors in tonight's story, who aren't here tonight, unfortunately, because John Richards is traveling with family to Japan right now, and he really is why I have this job, because without him, there would be no Joint Oil Fisheries Committee, which formed the Joint Oil Fisheries Liaison Office. I want to thank Craig Fusaro, who was the first and only liaison before me for 30 years, and I think it was 35. And since I began as liaison, he has always shared his words of wisdom with me, and you know, I'm just very grateful. And last but not least, I want to acknowledge the very hard work of the professionals of the oil and fisheries industries. And they are dedicated to their craft, to their families, and to the community that we all enjoy here. Okay, so let's get started. This evening, I'm going to introduce you to the local fisheries, give you a brief history of offshore oil and gas exploration, share with you a bit about why conflicts between two offshore industries, why that conflict escalated during the 1950s into the 1980s, and how the oil industry and commercial fishermen were able to come together to form this Joint Oil Fisheries Committee to negotiate together remedies that included the liaison office as part of that solution. Lastly, but not least, I'd like to share some info with you about decommissioning. So during my talk, I'll be showing you a few clips from this video that John Richards produced with others in 1990. And I know 36 years is a long time ago, but I think you will agree that it has a very relevant message for today and in the future as well. And that is to keep open lines of communication going and to work cooperatively through conflict for the good of all. Okay, so it is really important to know that the Santa Barbara Channel has for generations been a very active and vibrant center of the California commercial fisheries economy. In 2023, 2 years ago, nearly a quarter of all commercial fishermen and a fifth of all commercial fishing vessels permitted in California landed their catch in the Santa Barbara port area, which includes Santa Barbara Harbor, Ventura Harbor, Channel Islands Harbor, and Port Hueneme. And this port area has ranked first among the 9 regional port areas up and down the state, with nearly a quarter of California's commercial catch landing in this area to be sold. In 2023, the total catch in the area brought in $35.1 million at the dock. That means that that is to wholesale buyers and direct sales. So there is a multiplier to add to that. The success of the Santa Barbara Channel commercial fisheries has much to do with the channel being a biogeographic transition zone. And by that, you can look at this colorized sea surface temperature image, and it shows that the Santa Barbara Channel and the 4 northern channel islands, which are sitting within this white rectangle right there, and the cold water, which is in blue from the north, meet the warmer water currents from the south, which are in orange, and they come together here. And the dynamic oceanographic mixing conditions along the coast, combined with nutrient-rich waters upwelled from the deep, support a vast array of marine plants and animals, and in a wide variety of habitats, I think, as you all already know, in the channel. And this is the foundation for many valuable commercial fisheries that extend into this area from both the north and the south. Because of this interaction of many ever-changing environmental factors that affect these northern and southern species differently, fishermen must adapt to their fishing plans and practices accordingly. And it's not surprising that many fishermen participate in more than one fishery within and between years. Very versatile. Most of the fishing boats in the Santa Barbara Channel are small and fast, so that they're able to travel throughout the channel to where fishing is good, depending on how the populations they're targeting are responding to the changing environment. And the majority of fishing vessels in the Santa Barbara port area are in the trap fisheries. In the back of this boat are lobster traps ready to be deployed. And you may be able to see that there is line and buoy stored in each of those traps. A fishery can be defined in different ways. And tonight I'm going to use the word in its simplest way and refer to the specific types of gear targeting certain species. And some species are harvested by more than one gear type, like halibut, California halibut, and it's targeted with trawl, hook and line, and set gill net. And I'll talk more about those. And there are 9 major fisheries. That's quite a few here in the channel. So lobster traps are deployed onto the seafloor next to rocky habitat where the animals shelter in hidey holes. And look at that, all of these California spiny lobsters, and notice they don't have big claws like their Atlantic cousins. The most lucrative catch, this is the most lucrative catch brought into Santa Barbara in 2023. And this lobster was worth in ex-vessel value of $6.1 million. So ex-vessel value, yes, $6.1 million. And the ex-vessel value is basically the fisherman's income at the dock from the distributors and by direct sales. So what he's getting paid is much less what you have to pay. Red sea urchin have been the most valuable catch landed in the Santa Barbara Harbor by far for many years, until a massive die-out of sea stars was triggered by a coast-wide warm ocean event named the Warm Water Blob. And this was back in 2014, 2015, and it decimated the urchin fishery. And so as a result, the kelp forest, and that's because as a result of this, the kelp forest ecosystem was turned on its head, and the purple urchin population boomed and literally munched and mowed down the kelp forests. And keep in mind, the fishermen are going after the much larger red sea urchin. People are not interested in eating the purple. The red purple urchin fishery has been slowly recovering, and in 2023, it was the second most valuable catch landed in Santa Barbara Harbor, behind the lobster, with a $3 million ex-vessel value. So an interesting thing to know is that the commercial fishermen of Santa Barbara, they're here, are running a pilot study off San Miguel Island. That's the westernmost island that you see on the other side of the channel. And they are running a pilot study to remove purple urchins and take off grazing pressure so that the kelp forest can regrow. And this has been proven successful in other areas north and south of here, and the CFSB is hoping that they'll be able to scale this up and restore some of these kelp forests around us. The commercial urchin fishermen participate by bringing in the purple urchin, and then they are some are being fattened up for dinner plates. They're hoping to convince people that I heard they're very sweet. I honestly haven't tried them. And some is converted to fertilizer, and possibly there'll be other usable uses. So the poundage of crab and lobster, this is interesting, that is brought into the Santa Barbara Harbor in 2023 was very similar. But crab is a low-value fishery, and the catch ex-vessel value was $1.3 million. That's about 1/8 of what the lobster brought in, but the annual cost for fishing for lobster is much higher because lobster permits are very expensive. So there is less of a difference in net profit. And crabbers, like lobster trappers, they set their gear out for a period of time over several nights and return to haul up their catch. The longline fisheries target black cod, rockfish, and other ground fish in deeper federal waters. Federal waters are the waters that are more than 3 miles offshore. Those inside 3 miles are under state jurisdiction, state waters. Longline fisheries, the longline fishery brought in catch worth about the same amount as rock crab landings in Santa Barbara Harbor. The longline fishery for rockfish have replaced trawling that is prohibited through much of the Channel Islands region. The lines, some with hundreds of hooks, are tethered at both ends to surface buoys and flag markers. And many fishermen come from fishing families, and their commercial business is multi-generational, like the Colgates that are pictured here with some yummy black cod, sablefish. And fishermen new to the business may start with rods and reels. I think a lot of you have had that in your hand, but in order to size up and make more money, most move into and invest in more gear-intensive fisheries with time. The spot prawn fishery require bigger fishing vessels to carry larger traps, much more line. They're fishing in over 500 feet of water, they need bigger buoys for these deeper deployments. It's a small but high-valued fishery that mostly goes into Santa Barbara and Ventura ports. It is the fourth most valuable fishery in this port area. Now, trawling, it's still around. It's dwindled to only a few vessels because of a history of severe legislative and regulatory restrictions and pressure on fishermen to leave the fishery. Only the light touch trawl can be used in California state waters, and only in a zone that is known as the California Halibut Trawling Ground in the Channel, just a bit further south. That's only in an area between 2 and 3 miles offshore, or between 1 and 3 miles offshore, excuse me, a 2-mile wide zone. Let's see. The light touch trawl was designed by a local and highly respected fisherman. I'm happy to say he was my friend, Mike McCorkle, to reduce trawling impact on the seafloor and reduce bycatch. And that bycatch is what you cannot keep to sell. Mike loved and worked on the ocean all his life and was ever engaged with policymakers, scientists, and legislators. And he advocated not only for his own fishery, but the industry as a whole. He's very missed. Video footage has shown that this light touch trawl, and you can see him holding this chain, which is what he came up with, this idea. And the doors, they're not shown, but they're big, they look like doors. And as it's getting pulled through the water, the doors spread the net open. And this particular net, because of its chain at the bottom and the way it's shaped, it really just hops and hovers over the seafloor. And where it touches, it's a very light touch trawl. And it also has modifications to minimize that bycatch. Okay, and so I do want to say that trawling was once that backbone of the commercial fishing industry that supported working ports up and down the state. Okay. The net is fished over sandy and the trawl, the light touch trawl. It's fished over sandy and mud seafloor, and primary targets are California halibut, ridgeback shrimp, which are absolutely delicious, and sea cucumber, which not as delicious. Well, it depends on who you're talking to. And this is fried sea cucumber, which I've never tried. The ridgeback shrimp, you can only get it in Santa Barbara because it is highly perishable. And so go and get your ridgeback shrimp if you can find it. There are now only about 10 to 15 permitted vessels that are permitted to fish in the California halibut trawl zone, and only about half are actively trawling. So, on a handful. The trawlers can have permits to also fish in some areas of federal waters. Remember, that's 3 miles offshore or more. A controversial type of fishing is gill netting. And there are 2 types of gill net fishing. A set gill net, pictured here, is anchored on both ends of the net, and the gill net, the drift gill net on the next slide, is pulled behind a boat. And recent legislative acts will end both kinds of fishing in the coming years because of public outcry over lost nets ghost fishing and the bycatch of marine mammals, turtles, and seabirds. And this is a real concern, but it's coming to an end despite the industry really trying to work with the state and federal managers to design and adopt measures that have reduced the incidence of entanglement and mortality. So currently, set gill net fishing is permitted for specific species like California halibut, that's you see in the net, and angel shark and white sea bass. And this is all done south of only allowed south of Point Arguello in federal waters. 40 years ago, there were 900 California set gillnet permits, and now there's only 90. And of those, only a third are active. So it's really decimated the fishery. These are livelihoods. That's what strikes me. And only a very few of those 30 are producing significant catch to earn a living. Last year, in 2025, California passed legislation designed to phase out these remaining active set gillnet permits, and fishermen will not be allowed to transfer their permits to the next generation. California drift gillnet fishermen, okay, this is a different kind of drift net, targets swordfish, thresher shark, and tuna. And the Federal Drift Net Modernization and Bycatch Reduction Act, it's phasing out these gill nets in all U.S. waters with a specific focus on ending the California fishery by 2027, next year. The harpoon fishery that targets swordfish will continue. However, the drift gill net has been landing most of the swordfish in California ports, and this affects the cost of swordfish if you're getting locally caught swordfish. The government is encouraging the drift gill netters to adopt recently developed deep set buoy gear. These deeply, the long lines with hooks on them are set deep in the water to try to avoid the marine mammals and other seabirds, turtles that are in the shallower waters. But it's hard to adapt at times. It's expensive. Okay, so how many of you like fried calamari? I can't see the hands up, so I'm going to assume there's a lot of them. You may be surprised to learn that market squid is consistently the top commercial fishery in California by both volume and revenue, and it represents 60% of all landings. In 2025, it was the top fishery with over 175 million pounds landed, valued at nearly, wait for it, $83 million, ex-vessel value. The purse seine is a net used to surround and catch squid and other wet fish. It's a weird word, but it refers to anchovy, sardine, and mackerel. And Ventura and Hueneme are the dominant hub for the Southern California squid fishery. And Ventura Harbor is the permanent home of 44 of the 64 permitted squid seiner vessels. And close to 80% of the state's huge squid catch is brought into these two harbors. Okay, so that was, talking about the fisheries, and let's keep in mind that at the same time these fisheries developed over decades and supported families and businesses, offshore oil and gas production was developing and expanding throughout the Santa Barbara Channel. And offshore oil development started as early as 1896 on the south central California coast. And it was limited to the shoreline and nearshore waters. And America's first offshore oil field, guess where it was in Summerland. And in 1902, there were 400 wells across 15 piers. In 1958, the first offshore platform, named Platform Hazel, was built in 100 feet of water, just a few miles east of Santa Barbara and not far from this area that's pictured. And eventually, 25 other platforms would be installed offshore along with pipelines linking them to onshore facilities. So this video clip from 1990, it's from that movie, that video that John Richards produced, captures why the Santa Barbara Channel became a major oil and gas producing region in the world.
To the geologist looking for oil, finding an oil-saturated sandstone like this is better than a gold mine. The early geologists coming along this coast undoubtedly were quite excited to find something of this nature, a fully oil-saturated sandstone. Oil is produced from sandstones of this nature, out of the tiny pores in the rock itself. The conditions for the presence of oil and gas fields is unique in the world. This is one of those places that has those conditions. We can see a lot of them around us. The forces in nature, which also cause our earthquakes here in California, fold and fault and uplift these rocks from the deep subsurface, sometimes carrying them all the way to the surface, so they're exposed as they are here on this beach. In some cases, the petroleum that's generated within those rocks is carried up too, and can cause a tar seep like the one we see at Carpinteria Beach. Many of the folds and faults, however, are still buried in the subsurface underneath modern sediments which have covered them up. Those are the areas where we look for oil and gas. The petroleum geologists and geophysicists survey the ocean with seismic boats, and through this means are able to map those subsurface structures.
So these seismic surveys to find oil reserves and the best places to extract oil would begin to cause major disruptions for fishermen working offshore in the same area. Fishermen tell of conflicts with oil industry as early as the late 1940s and early 1950s when exploration moved further offshore. And pictured here is a heavy dynamite charge being detonated for seismic energy during offshore geophysical surveys. And quite quickly, fishermen were denouncing the activity. The blast killed fish and other marine animals in the survey area, and fishermen claimed fish dispersed and catch rates declined. And this pressure led to ending the dynamite seismic operations in state waters in 1949. In 1963, there was a resurgence of seismic survey activity when federal offshore lands were put up for lease. This coincided with a critical industry shift, moving away from explosives toward pneumatic acoustic repeaters called air guns and other non-explosive sources. And the seismic survey vessels towed sets of hydrophone cables that were 1 to 2 miles long. Not surprisingly, these vessels were not very maneuverable, and this caused many conflicts. Fishing vessels had to make way. Vessels with trawl nets, purse seines, or drift gill nets were not very maneuverable themselves. So in this clip, John Richards, Craig Griffin, a geophysics contractor, and Frank Donahue, a commercial fisherman, described the space use conflict that arose from these seismic surveys. And as a side note, I want to add that Captain Frank lent his expertise and participated in many cooperative research projects on fisheries throughout the years, and including my offshore surveys of juvenile rockfishes that was a component of our UCSB platform ecology research.
Not long after I began to work here about 12 years ago, I became aware of several conflicts that were occurring between the oil industry and fishing industry. Wellheads, debris left on the bottom, and construction of pipelines were some of the early conflicts that concerned the fishermen. By about 1983, things had really progressed out in the channel. Leasing increased. There were a lot more geophysical surveys, and just about all of the fleets had been affected by that time.
The reason all the boats end up being in the same area at the same time is usually tied to the federal government's leasing schedules. If the lease schedule, a lease sale is scheduled, all the companies that are potential bidders will want to evaluate that area. And quite often it's the fuse gets pretty short on the time the lease sale is finally confirmed and the time the sale actually happens. So all the companies want to get as much data as they possibly can to evaluate it, to decide what they want to bid on, which blocks, and how much they want to bid on them.
One of the problems with working with seismic activity and the fishing at the same time, we're both interested in the same area. It's a big ocean. real big ocean. But some of when we're fishing on the continental shelf, fishing on the bottom, they have the canyons and the reefs and stuff. They call them bottom anomalies. And the fish congregate near those canyons and those reefs and those bottom places. And that's the same places that the oil companies like to work, because a lot of times it might be a crack in the crust of the earth or something. And it's just unfortunate that they're interested in the same exact areas that we have.
Great to hear his voice. John Richards responded to fishermen's request for information from offshore oil operators, and he started a monthly newsletter that would provide helpful information to about both industries, for both industries. At its high point, he had 900 subscribers, and you have to keep in mind, this is all by, I think, typewriter and snail mail. That's why he needed a month, along with his colleagues, Carrie Culver, who is now the Sea Grant Marine Specialist for this area, and several other people. Oil companies began to inform fishermen of their survey plans and ask for input, which was really good. And on this map, the hatched area shows the seismic survey area extending from Santa Barbara to Ventura. And this is Tom Dabney, a trap fisherman.
Seismic.
Uh-oh. Okay, let's try that again.
Seismic people, when they're saying they're going to be one place, it seems like they haven't always been where they're going to be. They'll show us an area with some coordinates on it, draw them out on a map, and we'll say, that's fine, we're half a mile inside of you or outside of you or to the west or east of you. And it comes to find that that may be actually where they're only shooting. But when you're towing a cable that's a mile or more behind you, it's like trying to tow a water skier or something behind you. You don't always actually know where it's going to be. And when you go into a turn, that thing takes a long whip. And when they've done that, they've also cut off a lot of our traps. So all we come back is find an empty ocean. And that's not real nice. And our gear is designed to destruct and to quit fishing, usually within about a 3-month period after we quit servicing it. But during that time, it continues to harvest and fish is what they call a ghost trap, so it's actually competing against us.
Statement's been said that we'll run through fishing gear, things like that, just arbitrarily because it's in our way and things like that. But if we get in the gear, we've got very sensitive, over $1 million of equipment in the water. If it hits like a pot or a net or something like that, it does damage to our cable, which costs us the damage to the equipment. And then we also have to pull all the gear in, which can sometimes can take half a day to 24 hours, which is non-productive time and in most cases a non-revenue time for us.
So despite the communication of survey plans and monthly mailings of newsletters, work disruptions and gear loss were still a problem, and commercial fishermen were on the verge of suing the oil companies. Both industries knew that as more activities in the channel and vessel traffic increased, there would be many more conflicts. And not just conflicts, there would be grievances about damages and losses. So in 1983, John Richards brought together the oil company representatives and fishermen, commercial fishermen, to form the Joint Oil Fisheries Committee. And they worked with a professional mediator, and this committee was comprised of 4 fishermen and 4 company representatives. And there were many other fishermen and oil company reps that were communicating with each other and talking about the problems and trying to find solutions. And I do want to point out there are some of these fishermen here. There's Gordon Coda and Steve Dunn and Ricky Gutierrez. I might be missing somebody else, but anyone else here that was involved? And with the oil companies, I do know that Chevron's here. There was, I might his last name is Ichikura, and he was an integral member of the committee, and really they all worked very well together to find a solution. And the solution was to negotiate methods of conflict and those methods would do their best to avoid conflicts, and if there were conflicts, to resolve them. And the liaison office was created to facilitate the practice of those methods. So out of the negotiations, as I'm been repeating, the most important agreement was the communication between the industries that would be of utmost importance. And to this day, communications have improved greatly, but anyone in both industries can pick up a phone and call the liaison, me. And Craig phenomenally created a coastal culture of mutual respect and goodwill that this communication was based on. And when disputes arise, this is still going on, I and both parties aim for time-efficient and effective two-way problem solving and resolution. So as liaison, in addition to facilitating communications and goodwill, I am tasked with overseeing the VTCP, and that is the Oil Service Vessel Traffic Corridor Program that was established 40 years ago by the Joint Oil Fisheries Committee. And this is the Eastern Channel Chart between Santa Barbara Harbor and Port Hueneme, and it's kind of difficult to see, but there are traffic lanes that go from ports out to platforms. And the VTCP was a negotiated system of corridors where oil companies voluntarily kept their vessels in these lanes between landings and platforms, and they carry the liability for the loss or damage of fishing vessels if they stray outside of those corridors. And fishermen voluntarily stay out of those corridors, or otherwise they have to cover their own losses. And this program extends from Port Hueneme up to Morro Bay. And this system has been key in minimizing the risk of work disruptions and conflicts between the industries. And these conflicts are very expensive otherwise. They add up. At times, specious conflicts do arise, and fishermen call me to give the oil vessels a friendly reminder to stay in their lanes. And sometimes we learned that that the oil vessels had good reason to be out of their lanes. And a trawler brought this up in his nets a few years ago. There's still a lot of debris out there left from oil exploration activities, and debris from other activities as well, of course. And all these pose problems because trawlers snag on debris on the seafloor. If gear is lost or damaged from vessel traffic, they report it to me, and I assist them with filing a proper claim for compensation based on the evidence they provide of where it happened, the value of the value of the gear that needs to be replaced, and the lost income. And companies agree to pay for losses that occur outside of those lanes, right, in the area where their vessels operate within the VTCP. And when the responsibility for that gear damage cannot be determined, fishermen can apply for compensation from Santa Barbara County's Fishermen Contingency Fund, which comes from oil development permit fees. And that's what the trawler from the previous slide did. This is one of several impact mitigation programs that Craig, as the liaison, helped Santa Barbara fishermen through the years. Another program called the Fisheries Enhancement Fund has provided money for a number of, again, money from the oil companies from their permitting money. It's provided money for a number of improvements and programs to help commercial fishermen at ports from Morro Bay down to the Channel Islands. And here in Santa Barbara are some examples. They purchased the ice machine for the ice house that you see at the end of the pier. They installed a new fish hoist on the pier. They started the Santa Barbara direct sales market that you see every Saturday here at the pier. And commercial fishermen in Santa Barbara now manage that. They provided one-time funds to start the leasing in areas for gear storage that the commercial fishermen of Santa Barbara manage. And they reimbursed fishermen for purchases of safety equipment, really important, and what fishermen wanted, through a program that continues to this day. And my last but not least specified duty is to be a records and references librarian, Mary the librarian. And I enjoy finding and sharing information about just about anything. You can ask my husband and my daughter, and it's anything that fishermen or the oil companies are interested in. Most of you are familiar with what has been installed into the ocean environment what's been installed to support oil and gas production. So let's move on to the last topic. And that important matter is the decommissioning of platforms and production ends. So all the platforms off California are designed as latticed fixed steel structures as opposed to floating platforms that are tethered to the seafloor. This is platform habitat installed about mid-channel and south of Santa Barbara. The structures above the sea surface is called the topside and includes decks with drilling and production equipment, workrooms, living quarters, and a helideck. And the conductors reach down through the water column to the subsurface wells. The jacket is the supporting steel lattice structure. So what is decommissioning? Decommissioning is a complex, technical, and by-the-law process of plugging well holes in the Earth's crust and removing and disposing or recycling the equipment and structures that were installed to support that production. And disposal and recycling occurs onshore somewhere that will accept and process the materials. In federal waters, regulations from the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement, BSEE, must be met. To decommission a platform, all oil wells beneath it must be permanently sealed for in perpetuity. This is also known as plugging and abandonment. The conductor pipes, painted red right here, that were used for drilling and bringing up the oil are cut 15 feet below the mud line and removed. The legs of the jacket are also cut 15 feet below the mud line and removed. Pipelines and cables are to be removed even if buried, and when fully completed, this allows a company to be released from its lease holdings, although it remains liable for the integrity of the plugged wells. A side note, edible mussels that you see here in this picture form thick mats on the legs and cross members, and they cause tremendous drag on the platforms and have to be cleaned every few years. And about 30 or so years ago, these and scallops that grow on the platform were harvested during this cleaning and sold fresh and canned. And one fisherman who's here, Jeff Mawson, would like to restart this enterprise and harvest and maybe ranch these shellfish at the platforms. He's been connecting with agencies and working with scientists, I'm one of them, to try to find a federal and state regulatory pathway to allow this to happen, and hasn't been found yet, but people are working on it. And I wish him well. I think it's it's something that should be considered seriously. When I started working with Milton Love 30 years ago, there was very little scientific information on the ecology of platforms in the Santa Barbara Channel, and many scientists and lay people were skeptical that these platforms provided any environmental benefit as habitat. And backed by federal government funding and a little additional oil company money and state support, we gathered an immense amount of scientific data about California platforms from submersibles, autonomous underwater vehicles known as AUVs, scuba, net surveys, and laboratory studies. And as you see in this video, there is a rich diversity and abundance of life under the top sides of platforms. platforms. This is the little yellow submarine called the Delta. And this is platform Gilda, and you see all those little tiny things swimming around. Those are juvenile rockfish, and they've newly settled on the platform. Can I say millions of them, hundreds of thousands, so there's a lot of them. And we've seen this happen many times, a lot of juvenile rockfishes, young of the year we call them, platforms are nursery habitat. And as we go down the platform, you'll see that it's covered with marine life. And down here on the bottom, the deeper you go, platforms that are deeper tend to have larger fish, because rockfish, as they develop, as you saw, they come to the upper parts of the platforms, and then as they grow, they start to settle down, and you find that they're actually larger near the bottom. And the little lasers, you'll see two little red dots. Those are 20 centimeters apart, and that gives you an idea of how big these fish are. So they're still little. They're still young, subadults, we call them, and juveniles. It was always so much fun and fascinating to do this kind of work, and we were always surprised by what we saw. On this map, the circles are 20 platforms that are standing in the Santa Barbara Channel. The black circles are 11 platforms in areas with active federal leases. The red circles are 9 platforms that are in the process of decommissioning. And one platform, Platform Holly, is in state waters, and the other 19 are in federal waters. The X's are 6 platforms that have been removed completely. Among the 9 platforms that are being decommissioned, Platform Holly is the first to start the public environmental review process. An important decision to be made is whether the entire platform should be severed, 15 feet below the mudline, removed, and disposed of. So something to think about when comparing decommissioning options are the costs, risks, and benefits of full removal and partial removal, partially leaving it in place. What are the technological and logistical challenges? And these considerations are associated with the size of these structures. And Platform Holly stands in about 200 feet of water, and other platforms this size have been fully removed all around the world. Here in the Gulf of Mexico and Gulf of America. And the Ninian Northern platform that was in 460 feet of water in the North Sea is currently the deepest fixed platform to be removed. In comparison, I just love this that I kind of put together and stole from Chevron's website. I added things to it, but anyway, platform, in comparison, the deepest platforms that are being decommissioned is Platform Gale in the East Channel in 746 feet of water, and that is the height of the Golden Gate Bridge. And Platform Harvest stands at a depth of 675 feet of water, and the other 2 platforms off of Point Arguello is pretty darn deep too. Okay. I think most of you in the audience have heard about the possibility of leaving at least part of the platform in place to allow it to remain an artificial reef. And the California Marine Resources Legacy Act makes it allowable for decommissioned platform jackets to be designated a state-managed reef. The act also specifies specific benefits be derived from oil companies paying a lion's share of the cost savings to the state. The California Marine Resources Legacy Act explicitly specifies that the California Endowment for Marine Preservation must use these funds that it manages to conserve, protect, restore, and enhance the state's coastal and marine resources. Platform Holly is a special case because the state of California has claim of the lease area after the company Veneco that held the lease went bankrupt. As with all oil and gas structures in state waters, the State Lands Commission will be assessing total removal of all structures and shell mounds. In the case of Platform Holly, the state can make the decision to leave the platform in place with the upper portion of it cut off to allow safe navigation if it is determined that full removal poses significant, unmitigable negative environmental and socioeconomic impacts, and the best available scientific evidence indicates that the platform provides a net environmental benefit, which means, in other words, it enhances the environment for marine populations, and particularly if there is public support for that opinion. For other platforms on oil company leases, it presently seems highly unlikely that any will be partially removed for reefing for many reasons. One of them is that the 2010 legislation that I just spoke of, as is viewed as unworkable by the oil and gas industry, but there's still time. As of now, no platforms have been partially left in place as reefs. 6 platforms have been removed with pipelines and shell mounds left in place. The 4H platforms were removed during the spring and summer of 1996. They're off of Summerland. And the platform legs were severed using underwater explosives, killed a lot of fish. What remains in each site are the shell mounds. Here, a photo from an underwater inspection, with this, you can see the shell mounds there. And there's also a model next to it of what the shell mound looks like and its size relative to that little dot on the top, which is a 50-foot vessel. The mounds were going to be removed, but the decision was nixed out when it was found that old drill cuttings laden with harmful contaminants would be disturbed and released into the environment if the cap of shells were removed. A recent decommissioning project is Rincon Island, and you see the causeway and the island. It's an artificial island off Muscle Shoals as you drive to Ventura. The California State Lands Commission took over the camouflaged wells in 2017 after the operator went bankrupt. In summer of 2021, a total of 50 oil wells were plugged and abandoned, and the commission declared the island was now in safe long-term caretaker status. I worked with Milton Love, Ann Bull, and Ann Bull is here, Connor and Caitlin, and others on our team to survey and provide a biological assessment of the island's underwater habitat for the Commission's Environmental Impact Report. And we've done the same for Platform Holly. It's a unique habitat because of the large tetrapods that are shaped like jacks that buttress the wave and storm-exposed side of the island. These form large sea caves for fish and lobster, and fan corals are very abundant. The picture's gorgeous. The proposed Platform Holly decommissioning project that is being evaluated by California State Lands Commission and other state agencies is to remove the platform, its shell mounds, 2 seep tents, and all 6 pipelines and cables that run to shore. Platform Holly is a 61-year-old platform. It was built in 1965, and I think people always say, how big is this thing? And the dimensions of the platform jacket are about the area of 2 tennis courts. That's at the ocean surface. And then down at the bottom, it's about 1/3 of a football field. And that's half an acre. And the shell mound is about 1 acre. Some questions on a fisherman's mind about decommissioning is, how long will I have to keep out of this area to fish? Can work be phased through the area so I can fish during the project? What harbors and vessel routes are going to be used? And will fishermen be able to participate in the planning? And what are the environmental impacts of removal? How are they different between full and partial removal? Will the marine animals that I fish be harmed? Will they flee? Will they die? What will happen to all the materials that are taken out? And how much of the materials are going to be disposed of, recycled, and where? So, how long will the proposed Platform Holly full removal project take? It would be executed over 2 or 3 years, and would require approximately 5 to 7 months of work per season, about 20 months total to complete. Most offshore decommissioning tasks would take place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The California State Lands Commission's Environmental Impact Report will be finalized after receiving public comment about any concerns and recommendations. Fishermen fish in the project area. For some, it is an important area where they spend a lot of time fishing every year. And many of them are lobster fishermen. There are also crab trappers, trawlers, and some hook and line fishermen and sea urchin divers. So I hope my presentation tonight encourages you to ask questions and to seek current, reliable information to learn more about the fisheries and oil and gas development, production, and decommissioning, to be informed and to be able to share your opinion with the state. It's a really important opportunity for you if you really are wanting to make a difference. In late 2026 is the release of the Holly draft EIR. There's going to be a 60-day public review period and a public meeting. And like I said, your comments do matter. They read them all. And they take notes on them all. And share your opinion on the decommissioning alternatives, the removal or leave in place, the actions and impacts that concern you, how might these impacts be avoided or minimized with mitigation. And so thank you, everyone. I'm very happy that I could be here. Oh, and I guess it's an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. Good question. Okay, can we start commenting right now? They would like you to wait until the draft EIR is released, but that doesn't mean you have to, not start getting prepared and start learning about what's going on out there. Was the question, what do fishermen want? Do they want full removal or partial removal? Fishermen are like the public. There is a broad range of opinion and position, and I do know fishermen who say they put them in, they promised they would take them out in their lease agreement, they need to take them out. And so we have that position, and then we also have, as Jeff so eloquently expressed, that these platforms over the course of 50 years have become these living reefs, and that the work that Milton Love and Scarborough Bowl and others have done about platform ecology indicate that it's a productive habitat. So, it's kind of like there is a philosophical perspective, considerations that take place in this decision as well. So the question is, would the platform just have so much growth on it that it will not be stable, right? That it might break and or deteriorate. And one thing about you can slow down that deterioration by putting anodes that prevent oxidative erosion. Thank you. And then that I think that there's an estimate that they can be standing for hundreds of years. Yeah. So the concern and the question that was posed is, when they take out the platform, are they going to just take the whole thing out at once? Are they going to have to cut it? What kind of impact, by moving this giant structure and disturbing that sea life and taking it from here or there, how is that going to affect water quality and the rest of the habitat? Oh, and you never know what might happen during that removal process. And, there are great technical professionals involved in this, and they have already capped those wells well, and they are there for in perpetuity. And these oil companies don't mess around with that. They do not want something to happen. But you bring up a good point about the disturbance from the removal, and that is going to be considered by the state, and I hope all of you will become informed and learn about what these impacts can be. I don't want to take time and just lay them all out, but sedimentation, concern about all of the nutrients being disturbed from the sediments, and that there could be oxygen depletion issues, all kind. There are a number of things. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Okay. So, what is the positive of removing it? Okay. Leaving it in. Thank you. Of leaving the platform in, and there are fishermen, the trawlers, that. Especially in the early years before there was information about platform productivity, they strongly wanted those platforms removed and the shell mound taken out so that they can go back and trawl in those areas, because those were, almost every place where those platforms were put, they were important trawl areas. And so that was the positive. Well, okay, that can be the positive, but the 4H shell mounds are kind of something to make us think, because it was intended that those shell mounds be removed, and they were unable to remove. They did not want to remove them because of the fear of the contamination being released. And so Gordon Coda, right here, he went out and was contracted to trawl test the areas, and it could not be done. Gordon can tell you how many nets were destroyed from doing that. Did you hear that? So he couldn't keep up with patching the nets to do the test trawls the next day. And so, that things did not go as planned. And what resulted was that Chevron had to pay mitigation money to the trawlers so that they could buy sonar equipment so that they would be able to see those mounds and trawl around them. So there was a mitigative actions that took place because things didn't work out as they were expecting to. And Ricky Gutierrez, he's another fisherman right here. Okay, I'm going to try to paraphrase Ricky, okay? He's a long-time fisherman. He's a trap fisherman, and he was just saying how the spot prawn fishery, which is a lucrative fishery, they find that the spot prawn and fish and many other things like structure in the water, and that's where they fish. They fish near there, and if those platforms are removed, they're concerned that those resources won't be there anymore. And he is also concerned about the cumulative impact of the other things that have been affecting fisheries and fisheries decline. And as he mentioned, that the gill nets are being phased out. What are those fishermen going to be doing? He himself has moved from fishery to fishery, I think, and or other fishermen have. And so there is the cumulative impacts that people often don't think about, like, what if this happens, and this happens, and this happens? How is that going to impact me? Okay, when the platforms are being removed partially, how do they do that? I mean, how much of the platform is going to be kept there? And the word on the street is at 85 feet they cut them because that will allow the vessels safe passage over them. The wells in the Santa Ynez area are being opened, and how is that going to affect the whales and other... Oh, the sea life. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. I think you guys have heard that the Sable pipeline has been opened by federal presidential actions, and the 3 oil platforms in the Santa Ynez unit have begun production. And how is that going to affect marine life? Well, the oil and gas that is being produced is contained within pipelines, and it never sees the light of day as it goes onshore and through those pipelines. So sea life isn't affected. So I can say that. Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.